What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience.
That was a very, very rough camp for me, honestly, because I had lost my brother-in-law a month before the fight. I ended up having a pair of Thai pads with me, and my sister kind of lives out in the boonies a little bit down in Kentucky. So I strapped both Thai pads onto a tree, and that was kind of like my training partner for that entire week.
Today we have a very special guest. He is an amateur MMA fighter and an amateur kickboxer. He is originally from New Baden, Illinois, and currently trains at ES MMA Fitness in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm really excited to have him on because he has a fight coming up on Stand Up Fight Series, a title fight November 11th. So make sure to check out Stand Up Fight Series. Make sure to check out Austin Miller on Instagram and social media, and check out his upcoming fight on November 11th. Let's go ahead and welcome our guest, Austin the Outlaw Miller. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Did you train today?
I did. We had some sparring today. Usually Wednesdays are MMA, but with me and a couple other people having kickboxing, we did about half MMA, half kickbox.
Nice. Yeah, I mentioned it in the intro that you got that fight coming up November 11th. And Are there some other people from the gym on that card?
As of right now, there is not. Kendall was supposed to be on it. We had an opponent, and then I think they had some scheduling issues, so that we weren't able to get that one locked in. So right now it's just me from the gym on the card.
Nice. Yeah, I remember I was at the last one. Gosh, I can't remember. I think it was May or June or
yeah, I think it was May like 28th or something like that.
Yeah, so it was in the summertime. I remember that.
I'm usually good about my dates, but I know it was like May something.
There's been I watch fights every weekend, so it's like trying to keep them all straight. It's so hard.
Yeah.
But I think it was a summertime. But I remember I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've watched you fight. And there were a bunch of other ES fighters on that card, I think. And I think all of them won that night.
Yeah, we went 4-0 that night. So there was Parker Yealing, who is like the little brother of our gym in that. He is currently 3-0 in kickboxing.
Nice.
We had Luther Guerin, who went back home to England. I think he's actually training now at Renegade MMA, which is where Leon Edwards trains at. So I'm getting some Snapchats on that from him where
that's awesome.
Leon's here. And I'm like, cool, bro. You get to train with him? He's like, no, they wouldn't let me. I was like, all right, cool. Well, at least you get to see him in that. But and then we also had one other person on there who doesn't train with us anymore, but she also had won her fight in a pretty close decision, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I remember that because I noticed and I try to pay attention to like what fighters train at which gyms and stuff like that. And I noticed that and I was like, oh, that's really impressive. And so then, when I was kind of looking for a new gym, I was like, oh, I want to train there because it's, it seems like just a great culture there and very consistent, very like, I think that's what I needed, like structure.
Right.
So I really liked the consistency and so when I saw you guys were winning, I'm like, well, I want to be part of this team.
That's the deal breaker.
Yeah.
Sold, ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And obviously I'm not training like you guys are. I'm just, kind of more doing it for fun, for exercise, but I really have enjoyed it so far. How long have you been training there?
So I have been at ES since we opened about 3 years ago. Actually, me, Kendall, and I think 2 other people were like the first 4 like regular members that went, and we followed Erik from a gym that we used to train at to here. So we've been with Erik at ES since day one.
That's awesome. Yeah, Kendall's great too. I trained with him last week. He was very patient with me, which I appreciated.
Well, I'm glad he's patient with you because he yells at me a lot. No, I'm kidding.
No, he's great. He's great. Everybody there has been great with me so far. So I like it because, it's intimidating, especially when you're like looking for a new gym and you're trying to find a new place to go. It can be kind of scary. You don't know anybody and you're like, oh, I hope these people like me. I hope they
Right.
don't, think I suck. Like,
Well, that too, and you just don't know who all is there. You don't know who
yeah,
all is fighters, what type of fighters that they are, because there's definitely been some gyms that I've been at where a lot of their like main guys have quite frankly been dickheads, and it
yeah,
just kind of make the whole experience a lot less enjoyable. So that's one of the, like the cool things that we take pride in is, we're not going to sit there and like make things uncomfortable for you. We're not going to be running our mouths or doing anything stupid in that. Like we pride ourselves on making a very welcoming culture and just basically being there for anybody of all stages, whether you're a beginner and just want to do it to lose weight or get in shape, or if you're somebody that wants to begin their MMA career. And that's one of the main things that I really love about our gym, and especially the people in that. I mean, when I say my gym family is my extended family, I mean I think of them practically as if we're actual blood relatives. Um, but yeah, so that's one of the main things I really love about it.
yeah, it's great. I really do enjoy training there and yeah, like I said, just the consistency and the structure I think is huge. Cause I do think that some gyms that have a little bit less structure, I think that works for some people. I think it just depends on the person too. But for me, like I'm already like unorganized as it is. So I need a gym that like kind of gives me a little bit of structure and to where it's like every Thursday or whatever day I show up and it's, the same thing. And that's kind of what I need, especially with just like getting back into it and having not trained for a while. Yeah, but that's awesome. So obviously, I've exchanged very few words with you, so I'm excited to learn more about you. I'm excited to talk to you today, even though I've seen you at the gym several times. But yeah, so tell me about your fight coming up. What are you excited about? How are you feeling about it? All that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I am fighting for the Missouri/Ohio IKF title for the 172 class. My opponent is Brian Miller. He is 5-0. He is a Muay Thai based fighter. Very, very good striking. He is very nice and composed from what I've seen. Very upstanding individual in that, from what I have just seen on social media. And that he comes from a gym with some pretty nice people in that. So I'm very excited to be able to step in the ring with somebody like that. And with it being a title fight as well, I mean, it's something that really drives me a little bit more because as fighters, we always chase belts. It's
Yeah.
stupid a lot of the time, but when you put the belt on a line, it just adds that extra dash of sugar on top of it that just really pushes you a little bit more in the gym. So making it both to where not really something I want to think of, but we're both undefeated fighters when it comes to kickboxing. And then the belt on the line on top of that, I think it's going to be a very great matchup. I'm excited to meet him and meet him in the ring and be able to start trading some blows. I think it's going to be a very enjoyable fight. I know there are like 3 or 4 other title fights that night as well. So I mean, that whole card is going
Yeah.
to be absolutely explosive. I'm really loving what Chad Mueller and them are doing over at Stand Up Fight Series, and the fact that they're starting to travel out and have them in different areas. I mean, I think it's definitely going to be a very good promotion to watch out for in the future.
I think so too. And I had never really heard about it before. Obviously, I'm more into MMA. Like kickboxing is kind of foreign to me, honestly,
Right.
compared to MMA. So when they asked me to cover the event, I was like, oh, absolutely. Like I love watching kickboxing. I don't know much about it, but I've watched Glory and I've watched, some Muay Thai stuff and one championship. They do a lot of kickboxing and all that too. And so I was really excited. And then I didn't know what to expect though, because it's amateur fights mostly. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to expect here. But I was impressed. I was really impressed with the whole show. and just like all the fighters too. I mean, it was great. It was really entertaining and very, like, a lot of the guys were really technical, which I wasn't expecting it to be that technical, honestly. Just with the level of the fighters that were there, I was like, wow, I was genuinely impressed. Like, in not knowing what to expect, never having been to one of those shows, I was like, yeah, I don't know. But it was awesome, and I'm excited. I'm covering it again this year, so I'll be there, and giving you guys all shout outs.
There
Yeah,
you
as
go.
usual.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm excited, and yeah, November. There's a lot of events in November. The Shamrock ones on the 4th, and then the next week, this one, and I'm really excited for this one because, like you said, 4 title fights. I know Patrick Vega. I think he's fighting, right? Is he
Yes,
fighting in that fight?
Patrick
Yeah,
is fighting another individual who I believe is 9-1 and Pat's 9-0. I'm
yeah.
I'm super stoked for that one. Patrick's a really
Oh
good
yeah.
friend of mine, and I always love watching that dude fight. I mean,
Oh,
he
he's
he can
great.
take it and deal it back,
He's a
man. I mean, that
dog.
dude's like the freaking Terminator.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, I love it's so fun. Like, I feel like I noticed that was one thing I really liked about the stand-up fight series is there was a lot of personality there. Like, a lot of the fighters had a lot of fun personalities, and I love that. Like, that's just, it's one thing to be good at fighting, but then to also have like a fun personality on top of it. Like, it's
Oh,
great. And
absolutely.
I loved it. I loved it. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, kind of going back a little bit, how did you get into martial arts? How did you, I guess, become a fighter and get into all this stuff?
So I've always kind of been a fan of watching mixed martial arts. Probably since I was a junior in high school is when I first really started getting into it. I'm gonna get some hate for this, but the very first card I watched was the Nate Diaz and McGregor 2 at UFC 202.
Oh, that was such a good
And
fight.
then, oh man, the whole card was fantastic. And then that just started kind of my unhealthy obsession with Connor at that point, being a young high school kid and everything. I was playing football at the time, and I ended up going off to college at Lindenwood University in Belleville, Illinois, when they were still around. And I had a college scholarship for football. Um, the school ended up, due to some funding issues, ended up having to close down, I believe, in my junior year or right before. I think it was my junior year, towards the end of my junior year, going into my senior. So we were there for a whole other year of no sports. There was, I think, the year before that, there was over 1,400 students. And then the last year that they were open, there was like, I think, 400 of us. So it was almost like a ghost town. But I had a roommate at the time. It was me and 3 other guys living in a house on campus. And he was training at a gym here in St. Louis. And I had nothing else going on at the time. All I was doing was lifting and living under the belief, like, oh, yeah, I'll go to another college next year and play some more football and everything. And as I slowly started realizing that wasn't really in the cards, I started kind of saying, like, okay, well, what's next? Like, what am I going to do? Just keep lifting. So I started kind of getting into bodybuilding, wasn't really doing it smartly. Um, and then the McGregor Cowboy fight happened, and we all ended up getting it at our house. I was like super pumped about it the next day because we were all, half of us in the house wanted Cowboy to win, the other half wanted McGregor. So we were talking a bunch of shit to each other. And that week, my roommate ended up saying, like, hey, I train at this gym and that. You want to come with me and check it out? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? So that was kind of my introduction into it. I went to a couple of classes and then I ended up signing up for the membership. I went for about a month and then COVID hit and all of the gyms shut down. So then it was just back to lifting. And then once everything opened back up, I believe in that August, I kind of said, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna make this like my next thing. I don't really want to do it for any other purpose besides just learning martial arts. I want to, learn how to do jujitsu. I want to learn how to throw a punch correctly, so on and so forth. So I became a regular at a lot of the classes. I had nothing else really doing at that time because work and that was still closed. So I was able to spend a lot of time at the gym. That's when I got introduced to Erik Steenberg because he was one of the head coaches at that time. And I believe after 2 months, I ended up started doing personal sessions with him, one-on-ones, and was just starting to learn a little bit more and more, developing on my craft, working on a lot of the things that he was helping me with. And then I came in one day for our lesson, and he said, "Hey, like I never really talked with you about this. I'm not really sure, what your plans are. But I have a promotion that is looking for somebody around your weight class. The guy is 1-1. Actually, no, I think originally the guy that they had for me was 0-1." And he was like, "Oh, well, would it be something that you're interested in?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and like knock it off my bucket list. Like, cool, I'll do a fight. Like, why not?" So then the original guy backed out. I got another guy, and one thing led to another. I had the first fight. I ended up winning with a first round head kick knockout. And the feeling that I had after that was something that I had never experienced before. I had won plenty of games in football. I played baseball at one point. I won games there, but winning a fight like that was something that I'd never experienced. So I kind of just went with it, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, let's do one more. Like, why not? Um, so I had my second fight and I won that, and it just started kind of clicking in my head. And it may have just been ego talking, honestly. But I was like, yeah,
Right.
I think I can keep doing this. So we just kept on with it, and it's become something that I want to take as far as I can. I'm 25 years old. I know that a lot of people say that, once you turn 30, if you're not really going anywhere, then that's time to hang it up. But we're gonna work and see how far we go with it. I love everything that I do with it. I'm not really, you know, looking to go to the highest. I don't want to be the next McGregor or anything like that. I just want to be the absolute best martial artist that I can be, the best fighter that I can be, and hopefully along this journey be able to inspire some people to take up martial arts, not necessarily to actually go in and fight, because it's, at the end of the day, you are kind of damaging yourself a little bit. I'm not afraid to admit that, but this is something that I'm very passionate about. It's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about or watching or really just daydreaming about a lot of the time. So yeah, it just became kind of, I want to say, a healthy obsession, because
Yeah.
I try not to let it rule everything in my life, but it is definitely something that I thoroughly enjoy. It brings me a lot of happiness, and it's something that I want to make as many memories and as many accomplishments as I can. So one day when I have a kid or two, they can look back and see, well, dad did all this and that. Like, cool, that means I can do whatever, if they choose to
Yeah.
fight, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But my main thing is I want to do something that inspires people. I don't want to just live life taking everything as safe as possible. I want to make some memories. I want to do some things to throw my name out there, and not necessarily for fame or fortune or anything like that, but just something to maybe inspire somebody else along the road.
That's amazing. I love that mindset. I kind of have obviously I'm not a fighter, but I kind of have a similar mindset. So when I meet people that have the same mindset, I get really excited because it's just refreshing. There's too many people out there, I think, that are just kind of going through the motions and not pushing themselves out of their comfort zone and doing things, yeah, that are kind of scary. And honestly, kind of surprises me. I would have thought that you've been doing martial arts for longer. But I guess it really hasn't been that long because the Cowboy Connor fight was like what, right before COVID. So
Yeah, yeah. So I've been
yeah.
training for about 4 years and competing for about three now.
Wow, okay. Yeah. So that's, I mean, I guess it depends on who you're comparing yourself to, because like there's some fighters I talk to, they've been competing since they were a kid, and then there's some that they started after high school, so everybody kind of comes from a different background. But I think another thing that's really interesting is that a lot of fighters now, kind of like what you have done, are starting off training as an MMA fighter instead of oh, I started off as a jiu-jitsu person, I started off as a Muay Thai person, I started off whatever, a boxer. You kind of started off as an MMA fighter, which I think is really cool and interesting. And yeah, so what do you think about that? Like, as the sport continues to evolve, what do you think about fighters like yourself that are kind of coming up in training as a mixed martial artist rather than training as like a kickboxer, a jiu-jitsu, and then transitioning to martial arts, mixed martial arts?
I think it really just depends on what your end goal is. If you're somebody that wants to do full MMA, then I would say don't limit yourself to just one thing. Don't just limit yourself to become a really good striker and just have okay takedown defense or okay jiu-jitsu. Work to try and keep everything even. That's one thing that I kind of messed up at when I first began, as I spent a lot of my time learning how to strike, and it made my jiu-jitsu and my wrestling kind of fall behind a little bit. So I've been having to play a little bit of catch up over the years, but it's made me appreciate it a lot more. If you're somebody that just wants to do kickboxing, by all means, just do kickboxing. But I highly encourage you to learn some type of like wrestling or some type of jiu-jitsu. I think fully as a fighter, or even if you're not a fighter, it doesn't hurt to try and learn every aspect of it. Even if, you don't want to actually roll jiu-jitsu or anything like that, watch a seminar. Some of these seminars that they have out now on YouTube and that are free, and they're honestly very interesting to watch. Gordon Ryan releases a good amount of things. I really like some of his content. Demetrius Johnson, I believe, has a couple of videos on jiu-jitsu tactics and something like that. But honestly, don't limit yourself, and don't limit yourself to a style. I know there's a lot of people that fight currently who, let's say with Muay Thai and that, there's some people that follow Senchai and how he's more relaxed and makes everything playful and kind of plays to the crowd a little bit. So they try and copy and imitate only that. Or, with MMA, you have a lot of people that try mimicking McGregor. I'm guilty of it. I tried it when I first started. I'm not afraid to. Eric, my coach Erik, still gives me shit about it to this day.
That's funny.
But start with a base. Start with one thing that you want to learn, one person that you may not want to mimic, but just kind of follow along the lines of, and just be open to learning new things. Martial arts is a very wide spectrum. It's not just throwing punches and throwing kicks and rolling around with some other sweaty person on the ground. There's a whole lot more that goes into it, and there's a whole lot of different aspects behind it. So I'd say, honestly, just be open to learning anything. Don't just limit to one certain thing. Learn a little bit of striking if you're a jiu-jitsu guy. If you're a striker, learn a little bit of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I promise you it doesn't hurt, and it just makes things a lot more fun and enjoyable in your training. If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to burn yourself out. People that just strike every single day, it gets boring after a while. I'm not afraid to admit that. I get bored with striking, and striking is my favorite thing ever. There's also days where I drill a lot of jiu-jitsu or wrestling, and even I get bored with that. So mix it up. Have fun with your training, honestly.
Yeah, well, and especially with people who are wanting to kind of do it as a career or actually compete. Just as much as the sport has evolved, at least on the MMA side, you really can't be a one-trick pony anymore. And we're starting to see that more and more with just, even like Adesanya in his last fight. And there's been some others like Kron Gracie, more like jiu-jitsu, and he kind of got, I guess, not necessarily exposed, but kind of got a little bit by Jourdain, because Jourdain's just so well-rounded. Like, he's got great jiu-jitsu, he's got great striking, and I think we're really starting to see that more and more. So I think that's important. I think, and that's something I even want to do. Like, obviously right now I'm like taking baby steps getting back into it, but eventually I do want to do wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and I want to learn, like, even if I never compete, even if I never do anything, it's just something I really want to learn, and I think would make me a better analyst with watching MMA too. Like I think, and because one of my goals too is to do commentary, and I think it would make me a much better commentator as well in learning all that stuff. So I think, yeah, even if you're not somebody who is going to compete or try to, be the next Conor McGregor or whatever, I think it's still good to learn, because you're going to push yourself out of your comfort zone. It's going to give you a different perspective on things, especially as a fan watching MMA. And it's fun too. I mean, I've only taken 1 or 2 jiu-jitsu classes, but it was so much fun. And that's why I didn't continue, because it was so much fun that I was like, oh, I'm going to get like obsessed with this. And I don't have time to be obsessed with this right now. So, cause I'm kind of like you, and I think it's easy in martial arts. I think it's easy to get obsessed, because it is just such a fun. It's not only fun, but it's also competitive, and there's just so many aspects about it that makes it hard not to fall in love with it. It really is. Like, even just being a fan watching it, it's great. Well, how would you speaking of like kind of styles and things like that, I guess, when was your last MMA fight? Has it been a minute?
Yeah, it's been about a year. I believe June last year was my last MMA.
Okay, so you're kind of focusing on kickboxing right now.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Very cool. How would you kind of describe your style, your I guess little things that you do, little things that you work on? How would you kind of describe your style in kickboxing?
With kickboxing, I don't know if I can really define it to a certain style. I like watching Ben Wallace. He fought in Glory a couple of times. He's a 145er, I believe. He does a lot of like instructional striking stuff on TikTok and Instagram. I really like Alex Pereira. He's kind of stiff a little bit with the kickboxing, but I very much like watching his style. Some of the Adesanya, I really love watching Rodtang and Jonathan Haggerty. They're two that I really like trying to watch and study off of. But I try and not just limit to one certain person. I try and take aspects from different people. I've always said that, as if you're a fighter, and that pick 5 people that you really like to watch and study all 5 of them. And then once you kind of run your course of studying those 5 and you pick, what you want to learn from each one of them, pick another 3 and start learning off of them. So right now, my main ones have been Superlek, Rodtang, Jonathan Haggerty, Alex Pereira, and then Ben Wallace have been the 5 that I've been kind of basing a little bit off of mine. Just very kind of like more relaxed, a lot more flowy on the feet, really trying to cut angles, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed in your last fight. You did look very relaxed in there. You looked very calm. And there was one. Well, I know you got a knockdown like early in the first round, but there was another moment. I can't remember which round it was, but you threw, I think it was a Superman punch, or something like that.
He threw a Superman punch on me. I
Oh, he
remember that
did?
one. Yeah, he threw, I think, 3 or 4 of them.
Oh,
That
wow.
rewatching it, I was very caught off guard by that.
That's funny. Yeah, I was really impressed with that fight. And even though, obviously it went all the way to decision, but yeah, like I said, you looked really calm, you looked very relaxed. I thought that was the one thing that really stuck out to me, besides obviously like your striking's really good. But you've got great kicks, and I saw you threw some leg kicks in that fight. You threw some high kicks, but you got hands. I feel like your striking, like your punches are what really makes you dangerous, in my opinion. Yeah, and that must be just from, obviously, I mean, I've taken some boxing classes at ES, and the training there is great, and obviously with striking, like Erik's super, super knowledgeable, and especially boxing too, which that's one thing that I think is important, is like incorporating not only kickboxing, but also boxing, because in boxing, you learn a lot of footwork and cutting angles and stuff like that, which I think, Yeah, that's part of kind of what I noticed about, and like obviously I haven't watched a ton of your fights, but I remember that one. That was one thing that stuck out to me. Was just, yeah, relaxed, composed, good footwork. Yeah, it was impressive. It was a great fight too. It was fun. It was a fun fight. It was
Yeah,
kind of got a little wild in there.
it was fun, but there was some animosity behind that one.
Yeah, well, because it was I think you had fought his teammate or something before.
Yes. So my debut in kickboxing, I fought down in Arkansas, where him and his team are from, and I had won in the first 20 seconds of the first round via head kick knockout. Um, I'm gonna say this live, but I maybe took my celebration a little bit too far. Let the ego kind of get a hold of me a little bit.
I'm gonna have to
But
look this up later now.
it was a lot of me yelling, and looking back at it, maybe over celebrated a bit.
That's
But
hilarious.
my whole mindset behind that was I was on a 2 fight losing streak in MMA, and it
Yeah.
really affected my mental. I'm a person that really doesn't like to fail at things,
Yep.
so
I can
uh,
relate.
I I took it a little bit too far. I kind of let it slack my training a little bit. So that's kind of why Erik said, okay, let's step away from MMA and let's do kickboxing. You're a good striker. I think it'd be something fun, get you back in the ring, get your confidence back up with it. So we're going to focus only on this. So I was like, okay, cool. So we had the kickboxing, and like I said, 20 seconds in the first round, he switched his stance, kind of kept his hands low, and just reactionary. I threw a head kick and it landed pretty clean. So, what I didn't know was the whole reason behind him wanting to fight in that was because his team did not like the way that I celebrated, which again, I can completely understand. I'm
Yeah.
saying that live. Like, there's some people that are gonna say like, "Oh no, dude, you're fine. You want to fight a little bit." I maybe took it a little bit too far. I shouldn't have yelled that much. But so there was that. That was a very very rough camp for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I had lost my brother-in-law a
Oh
month
wow.
before the fight, maybe about a month and a half or so. It was very sudden, and it made me take kind of 2 weeks off of training. Um, well, training at the gym. I spent a week down at my sister's just with my family and everything. Um, it really kind of affected me mentally. I had to try and block a lot of things to be there for my sister and be there for my family. Um, I ended up having a pair of Thai pads with me, and my sister kind of lives out in the boonies a little bit down in Kentucky. So I strapped both Thai pads onto a tree, and that was kind of like my training partner for that entire week. Is I would just sit
Wow.
there punch Thai pads on a tree for a week straight. And then I came home for, I think, about 4 days, and then I had to go back for the actual funeral procession. So that whole final month of that camp was mentally agonizing. It was, I was very upset and very, honestly, very angry. It was really nothing towards him. It was really just the whole situation and just wanting to be there for my sister. Um, there was an incident where there was a fake account of my opponent that was made. We don't know who really made it, but whoever had made it, and that was talking some smack to some of the people at my gym,
Oh gosh.
and that kind of just sent me overboard.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I looked calm in that fight, because I can promise you mentally I was not. I stayed away from kicks. It wasn't anything on purpose, but I really went into that fight just with the whole mindset of uh, I want to fucking hit somebody. So I
Yeah.
was like, we're throwing hands. Like, whether I win or lose, like I'm gonna throw some fucking hands. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that he was a very tough competitor. I'm glad that he was, he understood the assignment and
Yeah.
just stood in there and kept trading with me. And that it made it honestly to me the most memorable fight that I've had so far. And to be able to talk with him afterwards and just be able to squash that beef.
Yeah.
I went and took a shot with him and his coach afterwards. We talked. His coach prayed over both of us. They are outstanding individuals. That whole gym has an outstanding support system behind them. I mean, I'm pretty sure the entirety of his gym drove from Arkansas and bought tickets to
Wow.
watch the fight because I don't know if you remember, but I remember in certain parts of the fight, I could hear like a whole corner of the place yelling out like TCB, which is gym and that. And I was like, okay, that's amazing, honestly, to have that support system. But Jesse was a really great sport and everything. Tough individual, definitely gained a little bit of a fan out of me afterwards. And I wish him and his team nothing but the best in that. But yeah, that was a really fun and enjoyable fight for me. And I'm glad that we were able to stand in the middle and just trade with each other and try and take a lot of that resentment and anger out on each other. So
Yeah, and see, these are the things that a lot of times people don't see behind the scenes that they don't know about, especially with just like fans watching or even other fighters, they don't know what's going on. I just talked to my last guest I had on, Keith Richardson. He's a bare knuckle boxer, and he lost his dad a couple weeks before his one of his fights, and talked about that. And it's like, yeah, like people have no idea like the things that a lot of fighters go through and still show up and make the walk. And so yeah, so I really admire that, and I admire your ability to kind of just, yeah, I mean, be able to fight through the emotion and not let it, get to you, not let it affect your performance, and still come out with the dubs. So that's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, just, I mean, that's combat sports is such a roller coaster for a lot of people. Like, how do you really manage like the highs and lows? Like you mentioned, you went on a 2-fight losing streak in MMA, and then you switched to kickboxing. Like, yeah, that's got to be an emotional roller coaster there.
it's tough. And honestly, I've always kind of been my own drill sergeant
Yeah.
when it came to every sport that I played. I really only started doing this once I believe I got into high school football. Um, I started off just the smaller kid. I had a lot of people tell me that I wasn't gonna make it on the starting line. I wasn't gonna, if I did, I wasn't really gonna do much behind it or anything like that. So I've been counted out for a while, and I know everybody says that and they want like sympathy from it. I don't really want the fucking sympathy from it, but I'm stating I was always kind of doubted. And that was
Yep.
something that really kind of drove me forward and really made me build a special kind of work ethic in myself. So when I say that I'm my own drill sergeant, I beat myself sometimes. If I don't feel like I'm doing the best that I can, I am my own most toxic enemy, and I will talk some mad shit to myself. And it's not always healthy in that, but I found a little bit healthier way of doing it. Instead of just belittling myself, I've learned to especially on my drives home from the gym. If I have a bad day at the gym, I know I have an 18-20 minute drive home. And that's that. I try to make that my cutoff. It's not always the case. Sometimes it leads a little bit longer. But I give myself that car ride to just kind of analyze everything. Okay, what did I do wrong here? Why did I get caught here? Why wasn't this working? Was it something that I was doing wrong, or was it that I wasn't executing the way that I needed to? And then I try and, as soon as I get home, that's it. It's done. As soon as I'm out of the car, we move on to the next day. I don't always do that perfectly. There's a lot of times where it drags on for the rest of my day. But for the most part, I've learned to try and do it a little bit more constructive instead of just belittling myself. And I think that that's the biggest thing with anything that you do. Don't belittle yourself to the point where, you are your own biggest hater. It's fine to kind of talk shit to yourself. It's fine
Yeah.
to like tell yourself like, hey, come on, bro, you can do better. Like, but don't sit there and just like beat yourself into the ground. I think that that's one thing that ruins a lot of people's like fitness journeys. And I say that because I personal trained for a while. I co-managed a gym for a little while. I've done fitness classes, I've taught fitness classes, I teach classes at the gym now. And that's the main thing that I see that ruins people is they get too down on themselves. You'll have somebody that shows up to kickboxing class for a month and wonder why they're not as good as somebody that's been here for a year and a half. It's not necessarily that they're better than you. It's just that they've done it longer. There's
Right.
a whole time frame difference. So there's no reason to be sitting there and beating yourself down. I know with people on weight loss journeys, when they don't see the scale move, it's very belittling. I've been there. When I got done playing football, I was like 240, 250, somewhere around there before I started training martial arts. And I slowly started seeing my weight drop after a while. And even now with cutting weight, if I don't see like my weight steadily drop the way that I'm wanting to, I'll start talking shit to myself a little bit. We're like, oh, come on, fatty, don't be eating this when you get home, and it's not worth it. It just throws
Yeah.
you off. So you need to you need to be both the angel and the devil to yourself. You need to know how to talk to yourself and motivate yourself, and you need to know what motivates you. Because there's some people that can read David Goggins' book or listen to, Jocko Willnick preach about going to the gym at 3 o'clock in the morning. And there's other people that all they want to do is they just want to hear somebody tell them that they're proud of them. And I think finding out what really pushes you and what drives you, what motivates you in order to do something, and being able to talk to yourself in that way, I think is the biggest step on any journey, whether it's fitness, whether it's getting the promotion that you're wanting, whether it's raising a family. I think that that could help a lot of things. I think we have too many people that just beat themselves down too much. And I think it causes a lot of depression issues, a lot of people who give up on their dreams, give up on, the job that they're at, give up really on, being a better father or mother or husband or boyfriend, girlfriend, so on and so forth. So constructive criticism is basically what I'm getting at here. Don't belittle yourself to the point where you want to stop. You can talk a little bit, give yourself a little bit of a kick in the ass if you need to, but don't make yourself lose the love that you have for something or somebody. Be able to talk nice to yourself, be able to push yourself, but also know when it's time to give yourself the kick in the ass. And that's definitely something that it took me a while to figure out. I spent a lot of time where I just talked a lot of shit on myself and told myself that I wasn't good enough for this or that I couldn't do that. But once I kind of switched the mindset a little bit and said, okay, I'm not good at this now, but I will be good at this a little bit later on. And I'm going to make sure that I take the steps in order to get there. It made everything progress so much more for me. And that's something that I've tried to carry a lot in everything that I do, whether it's my job, whether it's my relationship, my friendships, and that. And again, I'm not a perfect person. You're not always going to be perfect in that. But just having an idea of what makes you love something wholeheartedly and what makes you want to do something, know your role, like know your path, know the best way to get you there, the best way to talk to yourself in order to get there in that.
Yeah, you got to have purpose. I think it's super important. I think too many people are chasing happiness instead of purpose. And I think that happiness really comes from having a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's so true because it's like, I think there are so many external things that people look to for their happiness when really it comes from inside. It comes from you, and it comes from, yeah, like being good to yourself a little bit.
Right.
And, but still, being, I guess, humble. And that's that's something I've had to like figure out too. It's like, how do I stay humble and be good to myself at the same time? Because sometimes I feel like when I get high on myself, then I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm not, hot shit.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to calm down. Like, you know? And so that's something that I struggle with too. And just like that emotional roller coaster, like managing the highs and lows and trying not to let the highs get too high and the lows get too low, and knowing, who to lean on, or when to lean on yourself too. And just having that, it takes discipline too. It takes discipline to be good at, I guess, talking to yourself and not letting, because a lot of times it's not even the people talking crap and the people hating. It's usually me. It's usually the things I'm saying to myself that drive me crazy. So then when I hear somebody else say it, or somebody say something negative, then it just makes it even worse because I'm already down on myself. So I think that's super important. I think that's something a lot of people need to hear, because I mean, and so many people now like struggle with depression, and it's because of the culture that we've built in our society. I think has a lot to do with it. I mean, I know that, depression and sadness, and these are things that have been around since the beginning of time, but it's only gotten worse, especially when you go on Instagram and you're literally just seeing a highlight reel of everyone's life, and you're not seeing, the days that they were curled up in bed and wanted to not talk to anybody and just
curled up in
the
bed,
darkness,
eating a pint of ice cream by yourself. We've all been there. Let's be real.
Oh yeah. And I think that's important to just be open about it,
Right.
And just be like, like everybody has bad days. Everybody is hard on themselves. But when you figure out how to be hard on yourself in a good way, but at the same time, be nice to yourself, I think that's important. And I think that, once you figure that out, you're pretty much ready to rock. You're ready to go kick some ass.
Be your own big brother or sister, because you're a big brother or your big sister. And I've been lucky to have both a big brother and a big sister in that. So you get a mixture of the love, but you also get a mixture of, all right, it's time for you to stop being fucking lazy and go do something. So
exactly.
I've always kind of like, treat yourself like you're your own big brother or big sister. Know when it's time to love yourself. Know when it's time to give yourself the kick in the ass.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, and you talked about, your journey with fitness, and that's really cool that you have that experience as a personal trainer. I imagine having that background with, lifting and learning about nutrition, that's got to be really helpful for you as a fighter. Because I think that's something that a lot of fighters, they're looking to learn more about, and they're reading all these books and looking up all these different things about how to cut weight and how to eat right. And I know fighters that have their nutrition just dialed in, and I know fighters that eat garbage all the time. So it's like there's kind of a mix between the two. And there's some fighters, they'll preach all day long like, I eat McDonald's every day and I still make weight. And it's like, okay, well, you're not gonna be able to do that forever.
That's our main thing at the gym is Logan Jones, who's an up and coming amateur MMA fighter right now, one of the hardest working guys that we have in the gym. He cuts down he's about to cut down to 35, and he's like 2 months out from his next fight. He's already starting to kind of like work his weight down a little bit. And then you got Kendall, who he could be in the middle of camp. He could be like 2 weeks out, and he's still going to get Chipotle and make weight like the next week.
He's probably just got crazy genetics. That's funny.
Yeah, that dude's ripped like year round.
I know.
Love that dude to death, but God, that aggravates me. I'm like, dude, I spend so much time in the gym, and you can eat Chipotle and you look better than me. This is bullshit.
It's not fair. I know. I missed a couple weeks of the gym because I was sick, and I already feel like I'm like, look in the mirror. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like losing my gains.
Right.
Freaking out. I'm like, no. And then some people, they could go like months without working out and they look like they're chiseled from the gods. I'm like,
they look like they just stepped off of the stage. It's like, dude, this is bullshit. Genetics, man. They're a crazy thing.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Well, how important do you think that is in not even just like obviously making the weight and hitting that number on the scale, but also for your training and your mental too? Cause I noticed that when I eat healthier, you know, when I'm not eating, and I'm not perfect with my diet, but like I don't really eat fast food and I don't even go out to eat hardly ever. So I eat pretty healthy. I eat a lot of protein, meat and fruit and vegetables. How important do you think that is with your training, feeling good with training, but also staying sharp mentally too?
Oh, I think it definitely 100% plays a role in it. Um, you know, in college, I ate a lot of junk food, a lot of the shitty school cafeteria food and stuff like that. We would go out to bars and drink on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, and everything.
As many
Um,
people do in college.
yeah. So, and I definitely I felt like shit a lot of the
Yeah.
time. I felt bloated. I felt gross. I didn't like looking in the mirror a lot of the time. And then once
Right.
I started kind of like not really drilling myself, but really trying to force myself to like start eating healthier. You know, you notice that you start feeling a lot better about yourself. Your gut starts feeling more happy. You don't feel bloated all the time. So I definitely think that it's something that is very, very important. You want to make sure, especially in martial arts, where we're running ourselves ragged all the time. You know, you go from sparring to pad work to jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
rounds, wrestling rounds. That's being a little dramatic. You don't really do all four of those in a row, but you know, you're running your body ragged. So you have to make sure that you're replenishing, you know, your electrolytes. You want to have the right vitamins in your system. You want to make sure that you're fueled correctly. You have a good amount of carbs, good amount of fats, good amount of protein. It's definitely a huge game changer. I've definitely had times where after my fight, I'll take a week off just to kind of recuperate from camp and that. And I'll be honest, I eat like shit the whole week. It's bad. I'm a huge Taco Bell fanatic, so
Oh,
I'll
I
just be
haven't had
like,
Taco Bell
oh,
forever, and I'm
dude,
gonna be craving it.
I will get Taco Bell like all that week, and then I'll show up at the gym on Monday. And I'll be like, God, I feel so slow. I feel like horrible. This sucks. I hate it here. But so I I definitely think that especially finding the right diet for you. I've
Yeah.
experimented with a couple of them. Just the standard like bodybuilder, like chicken, rice, broccoli, the most
Yeah.
boring meal on earth. I say that, but I eat that majority of the time.
Yeah.
I my last camp I experimented with carnivore,
Hmm.
like all throughout that camp, and honestly, I thought it did really well for me. I was honestly surprised. I felt a lot more energized. I didn't feel like as bloated
I felt
all
the
the
same.
time.
So I didn't do
Yeah,
carnivore, but I did the animal based for a while. And I still
right.
pretty much that's like 80%, 90% of my diet. Um, you know, with some potato chips sprinkled in there once in a while.
Yeah. No, I
But
did more. Yeah, I did animal based, but I kept fruits and I kept avocados in there because I
yeah,
really
that's what
love
I did
putting
too.
avocado
And I
in
added
eggs.
sweet potatoes too.
Oh, see, I
Um,
didn't add sweet potatoes. I thought
that
about it, but
that
I
made a
never actually did.
big difference. I
Really?
felt yeah, because I just felt like I needed a little something, like a little bit
Right.
more carbs. And eating fruit all day is just so much sugar. So I was just
Yeah.
like, I need a little something else, you know, that to go with it.
Yeah.
And but doing that diet, and everybody was like making fun of me when I was doing it. But I felt so much mentally sharper when I was doing that diet. And that's why I kind of want to like get back to it. And like I said, it's still mostly what I eat. I just need to like not I need to be a little bit more disciplined.
Right.
But I was sick for like 2 weeks, so that's my excuse now. But I noticed, yeah, like I just could think more clearly and I had more energy. And everybody's like, you're not eating enough food. And I'm like, no, I think I'm eating plenty of food. I think this is the exact amount of food I need to eat. And I think
Right.
my body is not constantly processing things all day long. And I think that might be why. Like, I think your brain just like works better when it's not like if you think about it, you know, you're only eating a handful of ingredients in your diet. And I honestly believe this, the less ingredients that you are eating, in my opinion, I think the better, because it's less that your body has to process. You're not complicating it too much. And I think that's why, like, I felt fantastic when I was like really strict with it. And yeah, like, I mean, I was eating less food, obviously, because I mean, what am I going to do? Eat 8 chicken breasts in one day? You know, like, what am I going to do? So I was eating like one chicken breast or one chicken thigh. And then I'd eat like, you know, like 3 different types of fruit, 4 different types of fruit, sweet potatoes, whatever during the day. Avocado is a big one. I eat avocado like every day. And then I would have like a steak at night for dinner. And it was great. And I would have breakfast too. I'd have like bacon and eggs sometimes. Like at breakfast, I would kind of eat a little bit less healthy, I guess. And then like it would get more healthy as the day went on, I guess you could say. So I'd eat like bacon and eggs with like some blueberries or something. And then yeah, but I felt fantastic. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that reminds me I need to get a little bit more strict with my animal-based diet.
I wanted to do it again for this camp, and I started to for a little while, and then I was having some kind of like bloat issues where I just felt full a lot of the time. So I made a challenge. I cut out caffeine about
that's hard.
2 weeks ago. I say that, but I'm keeping it to where I still have an energy drink on Saturday before Saturday sparring, because I can't mess with tradition. But throughout the week and everything, I've been trying to cut out caffeine, mainly because I was abusing it a little bit and drinking too many energy drinks.
I do, yeah, I've done that.
I had to play with my diet a little bit. I added some more like peppers for the vitamins, and then some more like potatoes and pasta, just to kind of make up for a lot of that energy. And it helped out a lot. So I think that's another thing too, is just being able to like play with it and know what adjustments that you need to make with it. But yeah, last camp I did animal based throughout the whole thing. I felt pretty good. I didn't have any like sluggish issues. I know there was a lot of people that said that they experienced that. I didn't really have any issues with it. It didn't really affect my cardio or anything. I still felt like I looked pretty good too. But yeah, this one I've had to play with it a little bit and add a couple more things in there, just for the sake of, you know, keeping everything where it needs to be going. So
yeah, diet is huge. It affects everything. It affects your mental, your physical, in your training. And yeah, like I did think I was going to be more sluggish. And I think if I was only eating meat, if I was doing like full on carnivore, then I probably would have been, just without the carbs. But having, I think it was good for me too, because I realized how many times I'm like reaching for, you know, things that I shouldn't probably be eating as much, and like reaching for like something processed, because it's easy, you know, it's easy to reach for something that takes 5 seconds to heat up in the microwave. It's easy to grab a bag of chips instead of cutting up a pineapple, you know, it's way easier. So I think that it made me realize, it helped me get a little bit more discipline with just like, okay, whenever I get back from the grocery store, instead of just throwing everything in the fridge, I'm going to cut it up. I'm going to prep it as soon as I get home. And that way it's ready to go. I don't have to think about it. And it's going to be less likely that I'm going to go reach for something like that, reach for a bag of chips, because I already have my fruit and my vegetables ready to go and prepped. So, yeah, super, super helpful. But switching gears a little bit, I know you're an MMA fan. Obviously, you're a fighter, but I noticed that like some MMA fighters don't really watch UFC, which I think is funny. I guess because they're probably so busy training. Yeah, it makes sense. But I know you're an MMA fan, and thank you for supporting my podcast and checking it out. I really appreciate that, by the way, my MMA podcast. But what I kind of wanted to talk to you about MMA a little bit, and kind of what's going on in the current times with the fights going on right now. I mean, we didn't have any UFC this weekend, which it was kind of crazy. We had like 2-3 months in a row or maybe even longer, where there were fights every Saturday in the UFC.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. So yeah, so we've got this weekend, we've got Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green. I don't know if you are super familiar with either of those fighters, but what's your thoughts on that matchup?
I think that one's going to be a very interesting one. I know Grant Dawson has some pretty good jiu-jitsu. I believe he's 12 or 13 wins by submission, and I think 3 or 4 by knockout. Um, and then Bobby Green is just a hard hitter and very kind of sluggish, or not sluggish as in slow, but he can really slug some punches. But he did really kind of shock me in the last one when he submitted Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm very interested to see how this one turns out. I'm not really sure if it's going to stay standing or if it's going to turn into a wrestling match. Um, I would say if it turns into a more grappling match, I think my money would be a little bit more on Grant Dawson, um, just because I feel Dawson's maybe a little bit bigger than Bobby Green, not by
Yeah, he's
much.
pretty big.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I think that he might have a little bit better of a base to kind of hold him down and be able to work. But then
He's
again,
really strong.
yeah,
Really strong. Like his
but
I was just talking about this. He has over 73 minutes of control time in the UFC.
oh Jesus.
In his last fight, he got over 12 minutes of control time, and he only had 3 takedowns. And I think he has a total takedowns in the UFCs, like maybe like 29 or something like that. So 29 or somewhere around there takedowns and 73 minutes of control time is
Jesus.
absolutely bananas.
Yeah. That dude needs to be in the WWE or something.
He's
But yeah,
crazy. And he there was another crazy stat too. Oh yeah, and I was like, okay, well, how does this compare to like another dominant, grappler in the UFC? So I looked at Islam Makhachev, and Islam Makhachev has like 50 something minutes of control time in the UFC. So it seems like once Grant gets someone to the ground, it's very difficult for them to really do anything at that
right.
point. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. But Bobby Green, man, he's so just unorthodox and funky, and that's why I was so excited for the fight with Tony Ferguson, because they both are kind of like crazy styles, and just
Right.
you never know like what they're gonna do. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like with Grant, I don't know that he's really fought anybody. I mean, I can't even think of anybody else that has like a style like Bobby Green. He's just so unique. So
And
yeah, it's
Bobby
gonna be a
Green's
fun
just he's
fight.
got that ability to just turn the light switch off from just
Yeah.
a single punch. So that makes it kind of very interesting too to see, does Grant immediately go for the wrestling or do they try and stand and throw for a little bit?
Yeah, I would think that Bobby definitely probably has the edge on the feet for sure. And then Grant, obviously, huge
Yeah.
advantage on the ground. So it's a big clash of styles for sure. But Bobby Green, he's never been submitted in the UFC. So I think it might be hard for Grant to submit him. If he does, he'll be the first person to do it since I think Bobby Green's been submitted twice, and it was before the UFC. And the last time he was submitted was 14 years ago. So, so if Grant can make it happen, I mean, then that's huge. I mean, he'll be the first person in the UFC to submit Bobby Green, which I think that would probably be, I'm thinking it'll go to decision, but I think if he does finish him, it'll probably be a submission. But also, I mean, he could try to, ground and pound and get a TKO that way. But man, I mean, I know he's been finished before, obviously, but
He's
yeah,
just a
usually
tough
it's on the
dude.
feet,
He's
I
kind of a
think.
madman as well. I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to kind of bet against him and think that he's going to get TKO'd or even KO'd for that matter, because
I know.
he's got that resilience in him.
He does. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a dog.
it'll be an
He fought
interesting
Islam
one.
when nobody wanted to fight Islam.
Really.
Yeah, like I remember it was like hardly anybody wanted to fight him. It was like Drew Dober fought him. I can't remember who fought him first. I want to say Drew fought him first, or maybe Bobby did. But like nobody wanted to fight Islam, it seemed like. And finally, then Bobby fought him, Drew Dober fought him. They both lost, but it's like, yeah, well, at least they were willing to freaking get in there with him.
Right.
Like nobody wanted to fight that guy. And obviously, because he's just so dominant. Like he's not only with his grappling, which I think Khabib still is a better grappler than Islam. But I think Islam's a better striker than Khabib. That's what I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that.
Yeah, and I think that that's the biggest thing. Like, he's not only great on the ground, obviously, but Volkanovski had some success with him on the ground towards the end of their fight, which was shocking. Yeah. But he's got really good defense, striking defense. And he's got really good striking accuracy too. So I think that for Islam, like it's hard to beat him on the feet, in my opinion. Like, so even though Bobby Green's super good striker, Islam is just a really difficult guy to not only beat, but just to survive. So the fact that he was even willing to fight him is just insane. Because it's kind of a lose-lose. Like, you know, you lose the fight, and then you know, Islam's just using you to get another win on his resume and make his way to the title, which he did. And a lot of people kind of doubted him. You know, they're like, oh, he's not the next Khabib, like, you know, whatever. But man, he's done some really impressive things in his career. But it'll be interesting. What do you think about the rematch? What do you think about Oliveira versus Islam?
Oh man, I mean, personally, I'm rooting more towards Charles.
You got to root for him.
I think Charles really is going to have that chip on his shoulder. I know he's kind of had the chip on his shoulder a little bit more recently. Because his run at 145 was not very good.
Yeah.
And honestly, he was kind of known a little bit as a quitter. I know there was a couple of times where he either was injured or just really kind of just laid down and let the person beat on him. But I think he looks extremely good at 155. I think 155 is definitely his class. And I mean, it's hard to kind of count him out now. He kind of had that switch. I think he said it was the birth of his kids and that really kind of flipped that switch for him. And you know, when you have a man that has something like that motivating him, I mean, it's kind of hard to, you know, count him out, especially when you're coming back for a title that was yours. So
yeah,
I think he's definitely coming in there with a little bit of spit and vinegar. I feel like Islam might be taking it a little bit too soft, but you know, that's just kind of how majority of the Dagestani guys are. It's just very relaxed and calm, and whatever, it's another fight, like why not? So I think it'll be a good match. I feel like this one will be a little bit more grappling than the first.
I agree,
but I don't know. It's one of those ones where you have two very good grapplers, and you almost want it to stay striking. But Charles, he's got that issue with that chin. I mean, Gaethje dropped him, Dustin dropped him, Chandler dropped him in that, but he is able to come back from it. The only one he hadn't come back from was Islam. So it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. But I definitely would like to see Charles come back and get that belt, and then potentially somewhere down the line, maybe see a third one to just finally settle the score.
Yeah, for sure. I think if Oliveira wins, I think they'll probably definitely do a trilogy, and probably immediately, depending on how, you know, if he beats him like in the first round, if it's like a super dominant performance, then maybe, you know, somebody else can get a crack at the belt besides Islam. But I'm leaning toward Islam. I want Oliveira to win.
Yeah. You want so Oliveira to win, but you kind of want to pick the safe bet and go with
my
Islam.
brain's telling me Islam. But I don't think it's going to be a submission this time. Right. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that was like kind of a lucky submission, a little bit. Not lucky. Obviously, there's a ton of skill involved there, but he dropped him first. And I think that Charles was just kind of done at that point. Like, I think that if he wouldn't have dropped him and got into that position and tried to, I don't think he would have got the submission as easily as he did. I think Charles was just done. I think his striking and what I think that is going to happen if Islam wins. I either think it's going to be Islam. I don't think this fight's going to go to decision. I think it's either going to be Islam wins via TKO or Charles wins via submission. I think that Islam needs to be really careful with Charles on the ground. And I think the only way, unless he gets lucky again and drops him and can get on his back and do something crazy, I think that he's going to have to get Charles to the ground as quickly as possible, get him and like kind of in a stacked guard and get him to the fence, because if you have any open area around you, then Charles kind of has more opportunity to, he is a very active guard, and not only with submissions and because he's going to try for submissions. If you get him on the ground, like that's what Charles is going to do. He's going to try to submit you off of his back. And he has the ability to, of anybody that's ever fought Islam, he has the ability to submit him off his back. But not only that, but Charles, I think, hit him with an up kick in their last fight. And he throws elbows from the bottom. Like he's so good from his back. So he's a really tricky guy to beat on the ground. And I think that, I think the last fight, it was just mostly him being just kind of done, just getting hurt and then being like, oh, well, here's an opportunity for me to get out of this fight. And that's one thing I
definitely hope that he doesn't carry into this fight, is if he does get caught again, which I'm sure it'll probably happen. I hope that he kind of continues to fight back and not just lay there and let it happen. But
I agree.
Again,
I hope
he's
done
he
it
wins a decent amount in the past. So, you never know. You never know.
Yeah. Well, who knows? He might take Islam down. Like, has anybody ever thought about that? I mean, he is technically kind of the better grappler, in my opinion, if you look at their resumes. Because even when he was fighting Dariush, people were like, oh, Dariush is a better grappler. And it's like, dude, I don't know. I think I think on paper, Islam and Benil are better grapplers than Charles, kind of on paper. But for MMA, I just don't think there is a single person who has implemented jiu-jitsu better into MMA than Charles. Like, he's just the king. Like, he has the most submissions, but the way that he's incorporated jiu-jitsu into MMA, I think is just incredible. And so I think that's what makes him better at grappling. And even like with Volkanovski, like Islam couldn't really do anything to him on the ground. And so is Islam as good of a grappler as everybody thinks? I don't know. Like, I do still think Khabib is better, but I do think that a lot of the danger for Oliveira is going to be with the striking. And like I said, with him, if he can get him to the fence, like kind of how Khabib used to kind of just throw those nasty hammer fists and stuff on people on the ground. Like, I think if Islam can kind of do something like that, then I think that he'll be able to win. But Oliveira, I could see him absolutely maybe even taking Islam down and getting a submission himself. So I don't know. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be so crazy.
It's definitely going to be an interesting card to watch.
Yeah. Well, Khabib was in Islam's corner for the first fight, I think, but he wasn't in his corner against Volkanovski.
For the Volkanovski one, no.
Yeah. So I wonder if Khabib is going to be in his corner for this one. I don't know. Probably not.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think that's a big deal.
I don't know. I would imagine that he would.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
With it being in Abu Dhabi, maybe, I don't know, maybe that had something to do with it being, I can't remember, was the Volkanovski fight in Australia or was it in...
Yeah, that's what I thought. Was in Australia.
That probably had a lot to do with it too, him not being kind of in his home turf. And this one, I was hoping they were going to do the rematch in Brazil. I was like, it's only fair, right? If they do the first fight in Abu Dhabi, they got to do the rematch in Brazil. But of course, they don't. But I thought that would have been epic. And I'm sure there's a lot of factors behind that prevented that from happening. But I don't know, maybe the trilogy, they'll do it in Brazil. Who knows?
Maybe.
If
Never know.
Oliveira can get a dub this time around, we'll see. But yeah, so you're leaning towards Charles, I'm leaning towards Islam. But like I said, I hope Charles wins, honestly. I mean, you gotta root for him. He's such a, I think he's like the number one like fan favorite in MMA right now. Like I think he's great. Yeah. Him and Volkanovski are probably up there with like, yeah, the fans love Oliveira. He's great. He's made such a big rise too, like just with building such a strong fan base. And even if he loses, I feel like his fans are just still going to stay so loyal. And that's huge. That's huge in MMA, because fans are, man, they, as soon as you lose one fight, they're just like, oh, screw you, you suck. Oh, yeah. And it's like, whoa, yeah. Did you not remember all the other times that I won? Yep. You know, like, yep. It's funny. It's a crazy sport. But so who's your favorite fighter? Who's your favorite MMA fighter? I guess Connor. Is that your favorite?
It was, but more specifically, like 2013 to 2017 Connor, when you know, he was still
before good. He became like a billionaire.
Yeah, before he became an alcoholic billionaire piece of shit. Currently, I really like watching Demetrius Johnson. Oh yeah, and then Alexander Volkanovski. Those are probably the two that I really enjoy watching the most currently. Another one that I like is Stephen One Boy Thompson. I really like how loose and how dynamic his striking is. But yeah, those are really, I mean, John Jones. But these are all kind of just gimme ones. Yeah. As much as I hate to admit it, I like watching Poirier. I don't.
Oh, I love Poirier.
Biggest fan of Poirier. But I really do like his style. I like his boxing. I think he is very dynamic on his feet. And then Michael Chandler. I really like the explosiveness out of him. I don't like that he's kind of a human punching doll and tries to act like he's tougher than he kind of is.
I know, I'm like, please wrestle, please wrestle.
I'm like, dude, you're a wrestler. Please wrestle. Like, stop. Just throw punches on the ground, not in the air, buddy.
Yeah, he's frustrating, but he's so fun to watch, though. Even when he loses, it's so fun.
It's still just a great fight to watch. But yeah, those are really kind of the main ones that I circle around to. Is you know, Volkanovski, Chandler, and Demetrius Johnson. I know he hasn't had anything recently, but you know, just rewatching some of the old DJ fights and that, I really like.
Oh, he's amazing.
Oh,
talk about a complete fighter. Yeah. He's as complete as it gets, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's awesome. And Volkanovski too. They both really are kind of similar a little bit in that way of just like, they're good everywhere. Like, it's hard to beat them anywhere. The ground, standing up, like, good luck.
Like, yeah, I was really impressed with Volkanovski's takedown defense and his ability to get back up in that Islam fight.
Oh my God, I know.
Very impressed by that. Yeah,
he did way better in that fight than I expected. Like, I became a big Volkanovski fan after that. I was like, okay, like, this guy's,
I played Land Down Under for like a week straight after that.
Yeah, that was awesome. And you know, another person that I really want to see go to lightweight is Holloway. I really want to see him move up to lightweight, because it's like, who's going to beat him besides Volkanovski?
Well, who's going to beat him? But then also, who else is he going to fight at 145?
I know he's ran through the division.
He's fought everybody. I don't want to see, you know, Holloway versus Volkanovski like 7. Like, I just move up a weight. Hit the gym, get a little bit bigger, go up to 155, maybe make a run for the 55 title.
Well, if Charles loses again, I think Holloway Charles rematch. Because remember the first fight, it was only like not even half a round, I think, and Charles had that weird throat injury or whatever that was. I don't know what happened.
Or his collarbone or something like that.
Yeah, that was strange. Yeah, I want to see it. I want to see that rematch at lightweight, though, because I don't think Charles should try to move down to 140. He was talking about that, moving down to 145 to fight Volk. I'm like, no, please.
Yeah, no.
Please no.
You're going to ruin everything for you. Please don't. If
I'm
anything,
like,
move up
he'll
or
move up.
something.
He'll fight you at 155. Don't
Yeah.
worry. I'm like, he's good. So, and I think Holloway too, like the older he gets, like the less he's going to want to cut down to 145. So I think that if the timing works perfectly, I think that Holloway will either maybe rematch Volk at 155, which I think that could, if they made that fight at 155, then I could see like justifying the fourth fight. I think if they do it at 145 again, it's just like, come on, like, what are we doing here? But if one of them fights at 155, whether it's Charles or somebody else, then I think you could justify the rematch, and that would just be epic. If like maybe a couple years from now or something, they rematch. I don't think they should do it anytime soon, but yeah, like if one of them gets or if both of them can get like a win at lightweight, then maybe rematch if one of them has the belt at the time. Yeah, it's crazy right now. Lightweight is kind of just a lot of moving parts, and some people are kind of on their way out, like Dustin Poirier, I guess, kind of. As much as I would love to see Dustin win the belt, I mean, I know he's been interim champ, but has he won the lightweight title? I don't think he has. Yeah, he's just won the interim belt.
Champion.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love to see him win the belt, I just don't see it happening. I mean, we've got guys like Grant Dawson coming up. We've got just some killers, Gamrot, Fiziev, like, yeah, it's a crazy time at lightweight. There's a lot of movement, and it's still such a tough division. Like, to me right now, bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight are like the top divisions in MMA, like the toughest. So, yeah, it'll be fun. What do you think about UFC 300? Who do you think, or what fight would be like your dream fight for UFC 300?
A dream one? I'm not really sure. God, realistically, I think that's when they're finally going to book the McGregor Chandler fight.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah,
I could see that.
I feel like I think Uncle Dana is going to be looking for as much money as possible, and whatever McGregor fans are left at this point are going to lose their minds, and then those of us who are leaning a little bit more towards Chandler are really hoping that all this time that Chandler's been training just for Conor, that he's got something to go in there and just maybe finally get Conor to stop fucking talking about coming back. Like,
yeah,
you made your money, bro. You made your history. You did everything that you needed to do. Just right off into the sunset. Your whiskey's doing well. Your pub is doing well.
Or maybe go like box Jake Paul or something, or do something like that. Like,
go to boxing or something. You've done the most you can in MMA.
I agree.
You're risking tarnishing the legacy at this point. I mean, well, his antics outside of the ring have already tarnished it a little bit, but regardless, like, go to boxing. If you really need more money in that, go make some more money. If you really do love, congrats on getting the black belt and everything. I still respect Conor. I'm still a fan of his earlier time in that, but right now it's very hard to be a Conor fan if you have
well, and he's in such a weird spot. Because it's like you can't really put Conor on a fight night main event. You can't put Conor in a co-main. You can only really put Conor in a pay-per-view main event. So if he loses to Chandler, I mean, it's pretty much done. It's a wrap, because what is he going to do after that? Who is he going to fight? And what is he going to fight, Gamrot? Like, what is he going to do?
Well, at that point, he hasn't won a fight since the Cerrone fight, 4 years ago?
Yeah,
almost 4 years ago. So it's like,
and that was at welterweight.
Yeah.
He hasn't even won a fight at lightweight in like 5, 6, maybe even 7 years.
Is he 2-1 in welterweight? Because he had the 2 with Diaz, lost the first one, won the second, and then he fought Cowboy. So 2-1 at welterweight. So I don't know. Maybe make a run at welterweight, see what happens. I don't think it's very good, because there's a lot of real like deadly people in welterweight right now. But I don't know. I personally think that that's going to be kind of their money gimmick. That's going to be when they finally schedule Chandler and McGregor as the main event.
I could see that.
I don't really know who
Maybe that's why Connor's like procrastinating this. He wants
Yeah.
to be on that card. I mean, that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, he's always looking to make the most money as possible.
Yeah.
And even if he loses, though, he's gonna figure out some way, somehow to be like, oh well, this is, you know, this is what happened, and you know, this, he cheated. Like he'll make
My
up
foot was a balloon.
something. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
jeez.
Oh, Connor, he's so funny. It'll be interesting to see him you know, not in the USADA pool. Because it doesn't look like he's wanting to get tested. Looks like he's trying to dodge that as much as
Weird.
possible, which
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense because he had that injury, bad injury, which is really easy to re-injure. I mean, we just saw Chris Weidman come back from a similar injury and get injured again, which, God,
Yeah.
that guy just cannot, like, the odds are just so against it. It seems like the universe is just against Chris Weidman.
That's one of those ones where reluctantly you kind of have to be like, dude, come on, just stop. Like
Yeah.
you've had a great career. Please don't snap your shit again. Like please
Oh
don't.
my God. I was so paranoid about that happening too. I was like, what if he re-injures it? I'm like, oh my God.
He
And
started like egging his opponent on and telling him to kick it. And I'm like, dude, stop. You freaking psychopath. Like, why would you tell him to keep kicking that bar?
fighters are crazy.
Mm.
I love it. I love it. I love Chris Weidman though. He's so good. But yeah, it sucks when you see fighters like start to kind of deteriorate a little bit, and you know, you get older, you get injured even if you don't have like the CTE thing or whatever, and you don't get, you know, like a human punching bag. Even if you don't do that, like, it's still like your body breaks down. I think that's what's happening to Usman too.
Yeah.
I mean, even way before he lost to Leon, he's had a lot of issues with his knees, and I think it's starting to really affect him. So hopefully he can turn it around, but I don't know if he's ever gonna get that belt back. That's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Especially with a lot of these guys coming, like Ian Gary coming up at welterweight, and a lot of these guys coming up. Yeah. I think Ian Gary just got a fight. Oh yeah, he's fighting Vicente Luque. I think that's his next fight. But anyways, yeah. Thank you for chatting a little MMA with me. I know the listeners always appreciate a little MMA chat. So so yeah, it's fun. But kind of closing up here, are there any shout outs you want to make? Anything else you want to talk about? Yeah, the floor is yours.
No, I just want to keep it simple. You know, I want to shout out ES MMA and Fitness, my head coach, Erik Steenberg, and my manager, Emily Ackles. You know, my training partners, Kendall Whited, Corey Beck, Jesse Martinelli, Logan Jones, everybody at the gym that helps make me better as a martial artist and better as an individual every single day. Um, you know, I want to shout out to the fitness dojo who handles a lot of my strength and conditioning as well as my nutrition. Highly recommend them for anybody that is looking for a little bit of help in terms of, you know, if you're a fighter or any type of athlete looking to get a better strength program and so on and so forth. Message them over at the fitness dojo. Sarah and Steve and Lucas are all outstanding. Shout out to Rideouts Garage, one of my sponsors in that, a very good friend of mine. If you ever need any help with your vehicle or anything like that, you can always trust Rideouts. And just my family, friends, my girlfriend in that, and everybody that keeps me grounded and motivates me every single day. And really just anybody out there that, you know, is a fan or any kind of support system in that, you know, thank you for being on this journey with me and helping to give it some purpose in a sense. And then also shout out to Chad Mueller over at Stand Up Fight Series and everything that they're doing there in the promotion. And shout out to you as well, Bre, because your
Oh,
podcast
thank you.
is outstanding and it's something that I've been spending a lot of time listening to, and you're doing an absolutely great job.
I appreciate that. I've been working my butt off, so it means a lot to hear that. Yeah, and just like, you know, fighters, like I mean, I think that's why I love talking to fighters, and I love being a part of the MMA community, is because, yeah, like I'm kind of, doing something I've always wanted to do, and chasing a dream. And just like you guys are out there chasing your dreams, I'm out here chasing mine, just in a different way. And I hope that with what I'm doing and being involved with, like now I'm with Fight Bananas, and kind of have a bigger platform now to kind of give you guys a boost. So I hope it helps. And I hope that everything I'm doing, I hope whatever I can do to help you guys out, because I see the work that you're putting in. I know you guys work your butts off, so I want to help in any way that I can, for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.